I am Shirley, and this is my Catholic witness. I was born up in Kelso, Washington. Went to school down outside of Portland, Marylhurst College, and that was a big part of my life. And got married and had 4 children. And now my husband Dale has gone away, died, and I'm here, moved here, and I love my house. This is my sweet house, and I love the neighborhood, the area, the church. Very happy and content here. We were just inundated with our church. That was the church and my father's Kelso Maytag business. Those 2 things were really the basic touch marks for my whole family life. I mean, my whole family and my life. Church on Sunday, Friday no meat, activities. Most of our activities were church activities. Friends and relatives were all part of the church. Go to church on Sunday and we sat in the same pew, and my aunts and uncles and cousins would be all around me. So my faith was solid, and it was the encompassing thing for my whole growing up years. And I guess I had expected to think of more, like we never said the rosary. I'm sure there were a lot of people who did, but it just wasn't something that we did. We didn't have theological discussions as such, but we did a lot of talking. So it was just, it was so big in our life that's why I couldn't figure out what was its place in my life, because it was kind of overwhelming. I was confirmed at 12 and had studied different biographies of saints to think, well, what name do I want? And I came across St. Frances of Rome, a woman who was a mother with children. But what she did was, I guess maybe every day, filled up her basket with food and went out to feed the people in town. So I thought, oh, she's a mother and she's doing these saintly things. So that really attracted me, and I chose St. Francis for my confirmation name. But the confirmation itself, I don't remember.
When you were at Marylhurst, do you feel that your faith grew during those years?
Oh yes, it was such a different influence on me to have that. It was run by nuns, and it was all girls school. And I loved it. And with just being able to meet the sisters and learn what they were like, and the holy lives that they led, which were very human lives too, not just kind of really set apart. So it was a wonderful place to be. I would say, in the larger sense, the sisters at Marylhurst, because Catholic faith was the center, and all the ramifications were about the Catholic faith. They were very holy in the sense that they smiled a lot. I think if a person went to school, grade school with sisters, they might not see the same qualities that I did when I was more of an adult. But they also were holy name sisters, and they're really the only ones I have a close contact with. But they have a high educational background to them. I think a number of nuns, sisters, their main thing is either they run a farm, or they are with young children. But holy name sisters were definitely on a higher level intellectually, I would say, and educationally. So I really loved that, making friends with them. Just, it was a new experience for me, and I loved it. My husband Dale at the time, and he was a non-Catholic and did not attend church with me, but he had a very close friend who was going through a very difficult medical problems in his life, and it was very confusing to know what it was and why, and it affected Dale a lot. And this particular time, it must have been maybe during Lent, because I was over for an evening Mass. And all of a sudden, at the end of Mass, I just burst out crying. And I was very embarrassed by that, of course. I was sitting at the end of the pew, so it was easy for me to kind of go like this. I was praying, right? People didn't know, tears were just running down. I had no idea why that was. Then the thought came to me that I needed to see Dale's friend Mel and just be with him. And I wasn't thinking of laying on of hands at that point, but being there with him. And I was so confused. What was this all about? And there was one of our nuns that worked at the schools, or worked at the church, was there at the Mass. And so I made a point of tracking her down after Mass and telling her what I had just experienced, and asked her, what did she think I should do? And she said, you need to go home and tell your husband, and you need to follow up with the man, Mel, and just see what happens. And Mel did come to the house, and Dale was very concerned, so he was there with me. So many times, if it was a religious thing, he absented himself from the whole situation, but not with this. He was just right there with me, and I went over and I talked to Mel. Was sitting, in fact, in this very chair in my other house. Just, tell me about what was going on, and just we kind of had and then at the end I said, I'd like to say the Our Father with you, and so I did that, and that was the end of that particular situation. It led to my being able to process the idea of becoming a massage therapist, using hands, and I did. So that was an important tie-in there.
So how did you meet your husband?
Well, I was a camp counselor during the summer, and at home I had a group of friends who for the most part were all boys, and they wanted me to meet Dale, and he was a friend of theirs but lived in Portland, so I hadn't seen him that much. I don't think I'd seen him at all. And when I came over from my camp unit to the car to see the guys and chat, and they introduced me to Dale, it was the weirdest sensation, because when I looked at him, this thought came to me, how will he ever find God or heaven unless someone helps him? It was just in my mind. It was a strange kind of a feeling, and then it went, and we were talking and stuff like that. So then later, I guess that had to kind of sift through my mind and body, and just think, what did that mean? That he became more a part of our whole group, because he came more often now. I guess that was because I was part of the group. So I did, and then later it led to us getting engaged and married. Wasn't until the end, when we were living in McMinnville, and I'd say maybe about 2 years before the time he died, that we reached a new communication level that hadn't been there before, and not necessarily religious, but just plain communication. And he he went as long as he was going to work in the morning and I had finished work and was at home, I would sit up in bed after he'd gone and I would read. It would either be my Bible reading I did, or just plain reading. I just loved to sit up in bed and read. And so then when he was finished working and was back at home again, and it just came across that when I sat up in bed and was reading, well, why don't you read to me? And so started reading to each other back and forth. And then pretty soon I started reading daily scripture readings, which is what I've always have done, and the commentary that went each day with it. So that led to more just talking more about religious things, and we just started talking more. And it wasn't that he made any indication of interest at becoming a Catholic, but he was more interested in talking about things like that. It just was a very rich time of our life, I would say. I early developed, I'd say as a young adult, the habit of talking to God. And whenever I was confused or needed to make a decision, and I do it to this day, it's really my help keeping me sane, living alone. I'd say, okay, Lord, should I do this or that? Or, what am I supposed to do now? And I still do that. So I played the pump organ at our church, and every week I was there doing that. And as part of it, I became the one that played for funerals. And the high school was very close to the church. And so I would get excused when I had a funeral to play for. And I'd usually in the morning, I'd walk over to the church, play for a funeral, and then go back. And one of the things that came out of the funerals, it was always, we had the same priest for a long time. Just a wonderful, wonderful man. And he always ended every single sermon, homily, talk, whichever word you want to use, of the service with, "Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor has it entered into the hearts of men what God has," and I always forget the very end of it, but I wrote it down, "what God has prepared for those who love him." And it was like, for some reason, I connect that with a vocation of getting married and connecting with God and being able to relate to him by talking to him and just being close to him at all times.
Were there times in your life when you were able to remember that scripture and it helped you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. It was such a good scripture. I just love just the way it flew. Just the flow of that scripture just was wonderful. It's the universality of the Catholic Church. And that sounds kind of formal and maybe off-putting, but the fact that no matter where you go, you can find a church, Catholic Church. And I know all the times we would travel, vacation, whatever, and to this day, new place, one of the first things we would do was, okay, where's the Catholic Church? We got to find out what time the masses are. And it just, from all the way up through my life, that was true. And it was just a wonderful sense that the word Catholic even refers to universality, and that was so true. The other thing, not just the universality, but the opposite, the closeness. You go into a church, and because of our Catholic belief that the symbolism of a candle that's burning says that Christ is here under the auspices of the host. And so you go into a church and you're not, even if you're the only person there, you're not alone, because Christ, God, is right there with you. And that's such a wonderful encompassing, nurturing kind of a feeling to know. And being in other churches, it's just there's no comparison. I mean, it might be a very holy, good church, but it takes the congregation to make that holy goodness. In our Catholic Church, you don't have that feeling. So it's just like, it's almost too good to be true, in a sense that a person that does have that kind of feeling and nurturing from God, it's such a wonderful feeling. I would want them to know what a loving, encompassing, warm feeling it is being a Catholic. Sometimes it's not an easy thing to try to talk to a person about, or get the feeling perhaps that you're trying to push. For me, it's been a question of kind of holding back and then being responsive to people and waiting, if there was something that seemed to be that I could answer it about Catholicism, I would certainly do that. But being around a lot of non-Catholics for most of my life, I've kind of learned to hold back so that I didn't feel like I was overwhelming them with something they didn't want to hear about. But on the other hand, anytime there was something that I could share with people about it and tell them good things about it, I would be upfront, because it's such a rich, rich experience to be a Catholic. And it's so easy to be close to God. And it just encompasses me and keeps me safe my whole time.